Right, councillors, I apologise. It is important with our councillors that are on Zoom that we're all connected, and so we are about 5 minutes late. But we'll start our meeting. Welcome everyone to this, our October meeting. I'll start the meeting with a webcasting of the meeting. The meeting will be recorded for placement on council website for the purpose of broadening knowledge and participation in council issues and demonstrating council's commitment to openness and accountability. All speakers must ensure their comments are relevant to the issue at hand and refrain from making personal comments or criticism or mentioning any private information. No other persons are permitted to record the meeting unless specifically authorised by council to do so. For the opening of the meeting, we give the thanks to the contribution for our pioneers, early settlers, for those who fought in the various wars for the fabric of Tennant community we have today. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be accepted in thy sight, O Lord. Amen. In acknowledgement of the country, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land who are meeting on today. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, past, present and emerging, of the Yucca-Book, Kamilaroi and Bundjalung nations, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present. Councillors were all present, 8 here and 2 on Zoom, so there is no apologies, disclosures and declarations of interest. Councillors, I will remind us all, we're getting used to this, but make sure you press the button so it's recorded. We need to speak into the mic. I'll go first, Councillor Sawyer, and I have one to do with item COM 2321, community contributions and donations. There's a couple of applications there from the Show Society and one from the Trust. I am Vice President of the Show Society. My daughter Casey is Secretary of the Trust. They're non-procurement less than significant, and I'll be staying in the room. Councillor Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I also have a declaration of interest in COM 2321 for community contributions and donations. I'm the President of the Tenterfield Veterans Golf Association. It's less than significant, non-pecuniary, and I'll also be staying in the room.
Any other, Councillor Bromley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similarly, I'm a member of the Audit Festival now, and so I see there on this.
Yeah.
So I'll get you that item.
Have you filled one in, Councillor?
No, I forgot about that part. I've got it here.
Is that the only one you're filling one in for, Councillor?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Confirmation of the previous minutes, Councillor, to do with item MIN 22/21 of our previous meeting. Would someone who was in attendance at that meeting like to confirm that they are a true and correct record, please? Councillor John Forbes, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Tom Peters, thank you. All in favour? Again? Okay. Thank you. Councillors, we're moving to page 24 in your hard copy of your business paper. We apologise. There's no urgent and late, there's no date in the documents. Any urgent and late supplementary items? No community consultation, there's no mirror minute. Recommendations for items to be considered in the confidential part of our meeting. Councillors, we do have an item to do with the council with the confidential part, and it is item EC 019/21. Can I have a move in a second to deal with this in confidential, please? Councillor Sawyer, I'll take you as a mover, thank you. And Councillor Brian Murray, you as a second, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. To deal with open reports, councillors, we start with the item COM 23/21, community contribution donations for 21-22 financial year. Can I have a move in a second to deal with this, please? Councillor Berry, I thank you. Second, please. Councillor Murray, thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO, or Kylie. Which one to present?
No,
to our CEO. Thank you, Darren.
I'll take that on there, sorry.
Right hand side.
Yeah.
And volume.
Oh, okay, thank you. Mayor, just this purpose reports just to advise council on applications received requesting the financial support through council's community donations contributions policy, and for council to adopt the donations as discussed and recommended for the 21-22 financial year. I don't think council wants me to go through each one individually, do they?
No.
That's it. Okay. Yeah.
Any questions to our CEO to do with this? Councillor Tom Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On item 20,
Councillor Peters, just push your buttons. That's on the right hand side.
You're going to hold it down.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, on item 23, the Tenterfield Highland Pipe Band, is it still operational at all? You know?
I believe so, Councillor. Fair question.
Yeah.
But we did speak of this with on the day we've done the applications, and they are active. They do attend Anzac Day and Australia. That's what the fund was there for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Before I go to both councillors to accept this, I do thank the committee for the hard work and diligence we show with doing this. As we can see there, you know, absolutely fantastic interest in this, and from our community groups to have a total of $114,000 and we're only 45 to share the love with, and to that committee and the support of our CEO and staff, we always get there. Most of them got something, so I'm very pleased about that and the hard work. But really pleased and thank those councillors who give their time to go through that process. Right, the recommendations there, councillors, all in favour? Against? Carried. Page 34 in your hard copy, councillors, COM 24/21. Australia Day Awards and Australia Day event. Can I have a move in a second here to deal with this item, please? Move a second, Councillor Gromit, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Don Forbes, thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO to present this report.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor.
That's it.
Sorry, thank you. I'll get it right by the end of today.
Very good.
Thank you. I just want to point out before I just give you the summary that there is a typo in the actual report regarding the selection panel judging day. It does state Wednesday, 12th of January, and it actually should read Thursday, 13th of January. Thank you. Just qualify that. Purpose of reports for Council to endorse the arrangements for judging of Australia Day Awards as per Council's Australia Day Awards and Citizenship Ceremonies Policy, which is attached, and it outlines recommended arrangements for the 2022 Australia Day event. And the officer's recommendation is that Council approves the dates as prescribed.
Any questions to CEO or any staff to deal with that? Councillor McNish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we have this discussion every year,
Yep.
and this ceremony is becoming less and less relevant. If you take out the people who are the family and friends of the nominees, there's virtually nobody there. And to me, that's quite embarrassing. I think probably we've got to look at the future of what we're going to do with this, because it really is meaningless. I don't know what other councillors feel, but I mean, I like the theory behind it, but the public just aren't behind it.
Councillor, you have any ideas of how we can make it better?
Probably less not so much less pomp, but I think when you get one or two nominations, like a couple of years ago for the emergency volunteers, we had one nomination. That's embarrassing if you get a prize when you're going nominee.
But that nominee, and please respect my comment, councillor, would be deserving of that award.
Oh, I don't dispute that, Mr. Mayor, but you've got to have a bit of competition, otherwise it's becoming more meaningless. Just a comment rather than, you know, I think leave it as it is this year and just see what happens, but I think in the future we'll look at it.
To do with the, just to go back to the report, councillors, and I did in our brief with the Deputy Mayor and the CEO yesterday, we had a conversation. It's a tight time frame to do with the first meeting of the newly elected council and then that committee. So I hope everyone's respectful of that, because, and then they actually, Australia, it's only some weeks after that. So it is a tight time frame. So please be respectful that that has been discussed, and it's just nothing we can do about it. That's the way we're going to manage it. So we'll get there, as we always do. Any other comments, questions?
Yes.
Yep, Councillor Sawyer, apologise.
Yeah, there's also another typo in the actual recommendation of number 3. It should say Thursday, 13th of January 2022.
On page 34, Councillor.
Yes.
Yep. With number 3. Yes. Okay. Good. Okay, councillors, reports there for a recommendation for adoption. All in favour? Against? Okay. Thank you. Councillors, move on to page 42 in your hard copy. It's item COM 25/21, lease of council owned property. We'll have a move in a second to deal with this item, please. Councillor Gary Berry, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Brian Beakley, thank you. And I welcome Nev, our council staff, to present this report. Over to you, Nev.
Thanks, mate.
And welcome. Paul.
Sorry. Oh, you're right. Okay. So the purpose of this report. So what am I?
Just push it button there so it's recorded.
Right hand side, but hold it down.
Yes.
You got to hold it. Right.
Yeah. Now go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to facilitate Backtrack having a presence in Tenterfield and to consider the licensing of part of the RFS compound site at 50 Francis Street to them. I think I'll just deal with the report.
Yep. What
that says at the status quo at the time it was completed. I realise there's been other communications and they will probably come out later. So the background was that Backtrack are a non-for-profit community organisation. They're three, what they do, I suppose, is keep kids alive, keeping kids out of jail and helping them chase their hopes and dreams. They're funded by the Sonny Foundation and their proposal is an area of about 153 square metres, which would comprise 2 20-foot containers, a 40-foot shipping container with some landscaping and ancillary structures. The proposal, so they made an application. The proposal is for a semi-permanent facility. They were seeking a lease for a minimum of 5-year term and a commitment by all parties to revisit the agreement in the same period of 2026. In the report, a copy of the letter of application was included. Their site and location plan was attachment 2 and a concept plan contained was attachment 3. I might also say that at that stage that the RFS support letter was included with their application. So it was an agreement between Backtrack and RFS outside of council after council had tried to find several sites for them. But in saying that, I did give them some direction and sort of saying, well, you'll need to make sure that RFS are happy with what you're proposing in terms of a lease or license, that you cover whether the facilities are, in their view, appropriate, that council wouldn't be up for putting in new toilets and all that type of thing. And I wanted them to cover that to make sure that that was addressed. So the site itself, so the parent site is lot 1 on section 37 on DP 758959, 50 Francis Street. It's about 10,000 square metres, and the RFS occupy about 4,650 square metres of that. Their occupation is tied up within a service agreement between council and RFS. I'm not sure what that's under off the top of my head, but in essence, part of that agreement, which deals with finance and all sorts of things, deals with the land and buildings that RFS occupy. That's section 6.2, and in a roundabout sort of a way, they have a license over the property at what's called 3 Francis Street then, but it's actually 50 Francis Street. So technically they have a license over that land between council and them. So in the next part of the report, I gave some brief description of other sites that were considered, but I thought I might just expand on those a bit so that it's known. So other sites that were considered other than the RFS site is there is a strip of land just north of the RFS, people are aware of. It was considered to start with. The issue was potential sort of flood issues. And it's also, apart from that, it's also used by water and sewerage as a depot for some of their land. It would appear that the flooding may not be the issue that we thought it was, but it still would need some, it is in a flood zoned area on the town plan. Showgrounds were also considered. I think they looked at various sites there, not actually privy to all those conversations because the showgrounds are managed by the show trust. They're not managed by council and they're Crown land. So they have issues with Crown land and management. SES site was also considered, moving on to part of that. Again, it's physically okay. I think there is a bit of flooding there. But then there was difficulty then trying to deal with the SES and secure that as a site. The sale yards were also considered. They were going to move there on a temporary sort of basis, but that turned out to not be ideal from the backtrack's point of view. It was a fair way out of land and that caused logistical issues. The rugby league grounds were also considered. The issues there is that it's Crown Land Reserve. A use of backtrack would not be consistent with the reserve purpose or our plan of management, which is currently before the Crown Land. It also has an Aboriginal land claim over it, which is unresolved. Some Moombaleen land that was also awarded to the Moombaleen Local Land Council under an Aboriginal land claim was also considered, but it had in Scrub Road, but it had lack of services and caused a lot of money with access difficulties off Scrub Road and sewer and water. And there were other various lands around it that were in residential areas and they were discounted as well. So out of all that came an agreement between RFS and Backtrack to collate within the RFS compound, and that was the basis of proceeding with the report. The letter from the RFS area manager, Glenn Burns, is included as an attachment. It was quite a detailed letter and covered the things that were asked to cover and supported a lease for up to a 5-year period. It also addressed issues about sharing facilities, toilets and things like that, and maintenance. That they had sort of discussed that and come to an agreement. Then move on to the next section of the proposed license. So as I put there, initial discussions were in terms of a lease, but legal opinion was because technically the RFS has a license agreement within the service agreement between council and them that only you can't issue a lease over a license, so it will have to be a license. So proposal is upfront payment of $3,000 excluding GST, which would cover the initial cost and the ongoing administration costs, the lease preparation costs. That was put past Backtrack as a proposal, and they didn't see much of an issue with that, but that could be within their funding. Term 5 years, a rent nil because it's really the $3,000 builds in a rent. Well, it doesn't really matter the annual rent CPI adjustment if you don't have any. Not paying any outgoings, insurance, obviously they would be responsible for their own public risk liability and insuring their own buildings. Services, Backtrack to install meters for power and water usage and pay for such. So there's no cost to council in relation to water and sewer and power, sorry. Shared access amendment and amenities, I put in there, like we wouldn't enter in a lease unless there was a documented memorandum of understanding between New South Wales RFS and Backtrack. That's protection to make sure they understand and know what they're dealing with. Repairs and maintenance, that would be the responsible for their own buildings. The expiry of the lease, there's a bit of a fail-safe, an expiry of the lease and the termination of the lease. So sort of realise that 5-year agreement is a fairly long agreement and things can go wrong. So to build into that would be that either party can give each side 6 months notice that the licence could be terminated. I also discussed that briefly, I suppose, with Backtrack. They would be sort of happy with that. That's part of the reason why they go with demountable, so that if they have to move, it's not that hard to do. And the expiry of the licence, would require that they remove their facilities and make good the site. Make good the site means that they have to clear it out completely. So that was a bit of a fail-safe put in there just in case things don't go right. There'll be legal and licence preparation, will be their own cost for their own use, and they would have to get a development application and comply with conditions. So that's the basis of the report as presented.
Thanks, Nat. Councillors, questions to Nat to do the report? Councillor Gorman?
Yes, thanks. The further information that you've received from the RFS. So what's happened is that there's two issues here. One, it's got to be right for the kids, and one, it's got to be right for the RFS. Now, when I saw it in the business papers and knowing that site extremely well, I thought that diagram isn't correct, the one with the little red U on it. So I went up and had a look through the fence and spoke to a couple of volunteers, and they said, it's not going to fit there. That's where we put our trucks, that's where we put our cars, etc. 18 metres by 8.5, I think, from memory, takes up too much. So I contacted the captain who's in charge of the area, and he said, no, it's just 2 containers sitting up against each other for storage. I said, no, this is a training facility, 3 containers shaped in a U, 18 metres by 8.5. And he said, well, where do we put our trucks? And I said, what happens to those kids with the training facility when there's a Section 44 emergency on and you've got stuff in, the compound is absolutely packed. And what has also happened is they've been given a directive that when trucks now come from, or any vehicle comes from away, they're not allowed to park at motels anymore. They've got to be put in there as well. So he then said, could I ring the guy at Glen Innes, which is Glen Burns? So I rang Glen, and he said, no, it's only storage. It's only 2 containers for storage. And they'll only be in there for, half an hour in the morning to get their gear and they'll be gone. And I said, no, this is what it is. So I sent him a copy of that diagram showing the training facility, etc., as well as the information from Neb's report about the size. And he and the captain of Steinbrook had lengthy conversations. So then that afternoon, I went in and took photos of where the captain and another volunteer were measuring. And it's actually about 3 times the size, the length of that little red diagram you see on attachment 2. So it comes up to the fence, other than just a few metres. I also spoke with Josh Moylan from Back, who's being employed locally. He and Matt are going to be looking after the Backtrack kids, to confirm that it is training, not just storage. And he said, yes, that's right. And they would at times be there through the day doing their training all day. And RFS said, well, when that's on, they'll have to say they have to do their stuff off-site. And I thought, well, how's that fair on kids? These kids need consistency. So if you're going to send them off-site for months, now that last big Section 44, that place, they would have been banned from that area for 5 months and a week. Went from the 9th of September to the, 6th of September through to 14th of February. So it is a big concern. So anyway, after measuring it, the captain then contacted the Glen Innes fellow again and said it won't work. I've got correspondence here stating that it won't work as it's currently planned. And the letter from Glen to the captain says, thanks for the big letter. Yes, what I believe the original proposal was has now grown to something a bit bigger than Ben-Hur. It has gone from a couple of containers to a de facto school/training facility. So what he thought he was agreeing to is not what's actually proposed here. So while we were there, is that area that Ned has referred to the north of the compound, where the current sewage or whatever the black pipes are. RFS, it's part of the RFS licence at Greenwood area, I think, and they've got absolutely no objection to the backtrack going in there, and but not inside that compound. So if we can't resolve this today, I suggest we defer it to the next meeting or whatever, because it is not going to work from the volunteers' perspective. Oh, and the other thing is, as Josh said, it'll actually jut out past the gate, so we're going to have to move the entrance. So that shows you how big it actually is. It's not what's in that little document at all. So there's a concern here from the volunteers, a concern from the captain who has stated categorically it's not going to work as currently planned. And the fellow from Glennon has also said that the toilets aren't up to spec to have people there all day for several days, because at the moment they're a bit concerned they don't even meet the RFS requirements. So I know he sent a letter to Ned saying that he did want to withdraw support for the current plan, but he wants to support the community in any which way he can, but he's also got to support the operational aspect of people who are putting their lives and livelihoods at risk to protect our community. And what that place has to be right for the RFS to operate. So, and on top of the you apparently they're also talking about putting in patios and roofing structures, whatever. So that means they can't even park inside the U. That means their vehicles will be outside the U as well. So it's quite huge. I did email you guys a photo yesterday of actually how large that is when you step it out. So, so you step out 18 metres, which is nearly a fifth of a footy field, and by another 8.5, and then you add all the ancillary stuff as well. So it is problematic. We've got to do something to help these kids, but I'm sure there's somewhere else, such as that bit to the north, which I'm assured has never flooded, right up against near that fence there. There's a power pole right there and the water runs down past it. So can we have some further discussion on this site? Thanks.
I can add a bit more than what I said about that land just to the north. So,
microphone there.
Oh, sorry,
you're right.
So it is a flood zone area, but it would appear that it hasn't flooded and it was above the 1 in 100 year. You'd still have to make sure the buildings were at least 500 metres, half a metre above flood. But apart from that, it is also used. So it was also discounted on the basis that it is used by the water and sewer. They need that land. And also remembering that the rest of the land around the RFS, so the Transport Museum, this land going right around Douglas Street and then up behind, was all offered to Transport Museum as a lease last year. That hasn't been, well, they've sort of agreed to it, but they haven't actually signed it yet. But that's, so that land isn't available really to council anymore. So that small strip is, required by water and sewer. So that's just a bit more information.
Councillor, what do you?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to add, Nev has said they've looked at multiple sites and there's been difficulties absolutely everywhere. That piece of land to the north currently has pipes sitting on it. Do we not have the whole sewage farm, multiple other areas of council land that we control, that we can store pipes on, so that these kids can have a place there? I mean, surely we have alternative sites to put pipes that don't conflict with plans of management or Crown land or anything else, when we know that there's an uphill battle finding a suitable site for backtrack. And they've identified already 12 kids, I believe. 13 kids. So it's important for these local kids to do this. So can't we relocate some pipes to one of our other extensive areas of vacant land?
Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Berry in a minute. I have huge concerns with the way you've operated in the last couple of days. Now, talking with Glenn Burns yesterday, he said that you, and please respect my comments, councillor, because you've been around long enough to know how you need to work around this. So you've contacted Glenn as a RFS volunteer.
No,
No, he told me that you were there because it was, as a councillor, that's worse. Of course it is worse, councillor, it's not debate. Just hear me out. I've heard you out. Where I'm at today, if you wish to change it, well, you're going to be moving an amendment, right? So I'll deal with that in a minute. But I need to share with you that he said that to me, that you're a volunteer. Yet we did hear today you show no declaration of interest there, which you put on, and that is fair dinkum that you put on. Then I read your email from last night. Even Councillor Bromman making a comment about why would they need to say anything to watch videos or whatever they do with it. That's got nothing to do with us. This is a very successful, long-running campaign, and God bless the people who are running. We have been to hell and back and kick stones over for months about this. And what we're dealing here with is a 5-year lease agreement, which will be very successful, and I take on board and true everything you've said to do with the Section 44s, the time they wouldn't be able to access the site, and all that. Speaking to Glenn, which I'm quite entitled as mayor, yesterday, had a lengthy conversation with him to do with all this. He was happy because he's wrote a very well documented, I think, good supporting letter to support this, right? Not revoking it, to support it. And his only issue seemed to be the toilets, and to make sure that they worked with the Backtrack crowd to make sure that they're working together on this with the access and the area that they're providing them in that compound. But so, with me saying that, councillor, I needed to get it off my chest because it really concerned me the way you've operated in the last couple of days. You need to be very, very careful about whether you're a councillor or a RFS volunteer. And please, Councillor Bromman, I asked him that. Were you talking to him as a councillor or were you talking to him as an RFS volunteer? And he told me that you were talking to him as a volunteer. Well, we need to clear that because you need to be very careful about it.
Absolutely. I rang him. I rang the captain because of the council papers. I said, as councillor, we are looking at this on Wednesday.
Yep.
Quite clearly for council. I'm aware of the site because it's there.
Yep. As we all are.
Now, I don't normally jump on the trucks, right? So when the captain asked me to ring Glenn Burns, who's the new acting manager in Glen Innes.
He's part-time.
Yes, I did so. And so I said to him, I'm a councillor. We are looking at this on Wednesday. This has come in our business papers. So I said to him, I am ringing as a councillor, right? I went through the business papers, which is why, and he said, no, that is not correct. We have only agreed to putting 2 containers there with equipment. And I said, well, that's not what is being presented to us as council.
Right.
And I said to him that I'm familiar with the site. That might be where his statement is about me being a volunteer. But I said, I'm familiar with the site, and the volunteers I've spoken to have said it's not going to work. And the captain has just sent me an email text before to say, on the current site, this is not going to work. It actually says, definitely not going to work how it is planned. Right? So that is the information I'm operating on. Right. So when he wrote that letter of support, he wrote it, that very good letter, and I support Backtrack too. In fact, one of my dearest friends has only, in the last 12 months, done a whole program for them that allowed them to get another $300,000 to operate, which is fantastic. So that's why my point is, for the kids' sake, I don't want to see Backtrack come here and operate in an area that is unsuitable, where kids are actually going to be locked out for months at a time. Now, how disruptive is that for these kids? So that is why when I went down there, I only took photos. I didn't measure the area. I only took photos of the RFS people measuring the area. So I took those photos on my council iPad as a councillor with these documents in my hand, right?
Councillor, what I'll do, with respect,
so I think we should.
We're repeating ourselves. I will come back to you because you're flagging an amendment to do this report.
Yeah.
Councillor. Yeah. So I'll come back to you with that, Councillor Vera.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to put an amendment up, but I'll let Councillor Petrie put her amendment forward.
Any other questions to do the report, councillors? Councillor, I'll go back to you, Councillor Bromman, if you wish to move an amendment to us.
Well, I would like to move an amendment that we defer this until this support from the RFS is actually resolved. because my information this morning from the local captain who was in charge of that area is that the current plan will not work. The verbal information I had from Mr. Burns was that it won't work operationally. I mean, in that they're going to have to kick those kids out for months at a time potentially, and that room is too large to what, and it's not what they originally agreed to. So I think to sort this out, this is too important to get it wrong for both the kids and for the RFS. So I am proposing that we defer. And I think in all my correspondence, I've been extremely open about anything I've done the last few days.
Just, can you please, Councillor Michael, just say something? Did you get that there? You know, Congress Mayor.
So I think, Mr. Mayor, just going back to the recommendation from the officers at this point in time, that we're actually talking about a lease that doesn't or a licence that doesn't actually specify a location within that particular compound. So there is the opportunity, obviously, to rejig and continue to negotiate on placement and the like. So that plan on there is actually an indicative plan. If you look at the recommendation, we're talking about issuing a licence for the continued negotiations, I guess, between the RFS and Backtrack as to where that would suit. So if we are still looking at the same property, but a rejig of where things are, then I would suggest that council probably still consider the officer's recommendation. If it's council's view that they're not looking at that particular site, then the amendment would be appropriate.
I can give you that information.
Any other questions, Councillor? Councillor Bromley?
We did walk all around the site in case there was an area out the back. And that's not suitable either because that's near the toilets there. One, it would be, just kind of couldn't fit it. And the second thing is that the captain said that they're looking at rejigging and doing construction work out the back there. And that would make that an impossibility as well, because that's why I said, is there anywhere out the back here that they could go? Furthermore, because of they currently can't land shoppers in there because of the new bitumen that the council's put down.
You did share that just now.
Yeah, and so they're actually asking, they're going to, I think, approach council to see if they can take a lease out over that portion for at the back. And that's what I said to them, if you want that land, it's a separate thing, you've got to approach council. And I gave them their contact details on that because potentially they can land shoppers there in the meantime in an emergency till they sort out the vision. There's just no room at the front once you start putting in all the trucks and cars and choppers and everything. If you take out a minimum of 18 metres by 8.5 and actually have to move the gate and the driveway, that shows you how actually large it is. So that's why I would ask you all to consider deferring this until we can actually, let's go on site with the captain and get Mr. Burns up and just have a look at the site. And we can't, if we agree to something like this, it's just going to become hell for the kids as well as for the RFS.
Councillor, I'll come to you with that amendment. Councillor Mulgrave and Councillor Michael, did you wish to have any comment? I apologise if I missed you.
Mr. Sorry, Michael, you go.
Yeah, no, I think there's been enough said about it myself. I think a lot of time's been put into it, and I don't think we need to worry about it, really.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I've taken on board all that stuff that Councillor Bowman has mentioned, but I think, you know, once an agreement has been reached with the nitty-gritty can be worked out as things progress. So I don't have any issues with it as it stands.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bowman, I'll go back for your wording with your amendment.
Mr. Mayor?
I apologise, Councillor Tom.
Yeah, just a quick one.
Push your mic, please.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Just a quick one. There's another site that hasn't been considered. That's the old Tenterfield Powerhouse. I don't know whether that'll be a goer. It's got everything there.
We don't own it, Councillor.
No, I really realise that, but I mean, it's not being used and it could be leased to them.
It is,
out of the way.
And I
Thank you.
seriously take your comments on board, but it is at the moment because through various organisations have been trying to deal with the central energy, and I think it's going to go on the market, I think, for sale. So that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the idea, and thanks for your comment. Right, Councillor Bowman.
Excuse me, Mr.
I
Mayor.
apologise.
You need a seconder for the amendment.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for the wording on the amendment. Don't ask for a second. Thank you. Councillor?
That this item, whatever the number is,
COM 2521.
be deferred until an on-site inspection with the captain of the Steinbrook Brigade and the Glen Innes acting manager and council.
You read, make sure that what lips on. Councillor Berry, you indicated that you were happy to second that. No. You're not happy to second that. Right.
Sorry, and clarify the agreement with the RFS, because both Glenn Burns and the captain have said they agreed to not what's in this paper that we're now going to vote on. They've only agreed to 2 side-by-side containers with storage. Right. And limited access.
So you're happy with the wording up there, Councillor?
And clarification of the RFS agreement.
So that this item, COM.
Slash 21, yep.
COM 2521 be deferred until an on-site inspection with the captain of the Steinbrook Brigade and the acting manager. RFS, was it?
Just for Glenn Burns. I'm not sure what his position is. And I looked at some correspondence and I actually have stated that on council, Mr. Mayor. 2 N's and an E in Burns. Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Or written clarification of precisely what the RFS agreement is. Because verbally and in writing, I've been told they have not agreed to this training hub, they have only agreed to storage. And I haven't had an answer yet as to why we can't move our pipes on the northern edge there, why the pipes are more important than this, but the RFS isn't as important.
I'll just go to Colin before I ask for a second. And Councillor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you for making a point of the second, but that's what I'll do. Make sure that's the word Colin.
So I think the only thing from my perspective to keep in mind with this is the agreement between Backtrack and the RFS is the agreement between Backtrack and the RFS, and council's not actually party to that agreement. So where their concerns are raised with each other, they need to move a way forward, not necessarily council participate in the brokerage of that agreement as a third party. We're just looking at issuing a lease whereby they can continue, or a license where they can continue to discuss, should they also choose not to exercise that license because their agreement fails in some particular way, then that also is their business, not necessarily the business of council.
Okay. So with that advice, Councillor, you probably need to take that last bit out.
Yes, okay.
It's just to be cautious.
Yeah,
good point.
That's fine. Look, I've been asked by the captain to oppose this to make sure this doesn't happen because we're just not going to work.
Councillor, what I'm giving you, because you're quite entitled to move an amendment. So I'm giving you the opportunity to move an amendment. I'm just about to ask for a second. So are you happy with the wording up there?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Do I have a second for the amendment? Councillor John McNish. Councillor Bowman, did you wish to speak to the amendment?
I would like an answer as to why they can't go adjacent to the RFS and move our council pipe. Surely, if this, you've said this
to the north.
Yeah, to the north. Yep. The RFS is perfectly agreeable with that. It's still on lot 1, but they've said not inside that compound because of all the other issues of space and requirement and operational interference with these kids, which is really bad for these kids. And I would think that moving our pipes to our multiple other sites would be far a better outcome for these kids because they would have their own entryway, it's fenced off, it's et cetera, and RFS is perfectly supportive of that, but not supportive of inside the compound from my discussions. And so I would ask until that's sorted out, we just need to defer this and get it right, because there's no point doing a license over there if in fact we can easily do an agreement with Backtrack, for instance, immediately adjacent to the north.
Councillor McNish, been a second. Do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, after reading this report last night, it seems a bit confusing. The RFS think it's going to be something, where in fact it's going to be something totally different, like a full training hub. I read it as just being 2 containers containing wire, strainers, all that sort of fencing gear. But obviously going to be a much bigger thing than that. So that's why I'm happy to support this amendment.
Thank you. I won't never, with respect, because of the comment Councillor Robin has made about the northern area, I'll leave that to a later date. I'll go back to the comment that Corey made. This is what we're doing. What we're doing here is voting on a recommendation with the 4 dot points that are there, which is a 5-year lease agreement between RFS and Backpack. So any negotiation or shifting, whatever the guys read, is between them. So I'll just leave that, and so I need to say that. Before we go to you, Councillor, I could have had 2 speakers for dealing with the amendment. I'll come to you, but I'll just go to CE for some comment.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I mean, look, at the end of the day, again, I mean, you know, my approach is always a light touch, and I think the confusion is that all we're doing is opening the gate that if those 2 parties want to negotiate and have an agreement, they will have that discussion, they'll enter an MOU, or they'll enter a contract, or they won't. If the RFS doesn't want it and they can't negotiate a simple solution with Backtracks, then they won't execute anything. What we do today doesn't stop that. We don't actually, us supporting the recommendation doesn't give it a fait accompli. All that does is open the gate for them to negotiate. And at the end of the day, our fingerprints aren't on it. It's between those 2 groups. And if they can't come to an agreement, then I guess Backtracks will come back to us and say, well, is there any other option? I'm not so sure we have to have our fingerprints on their negotiations.
Thank you, Mr. C. Mr. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Sawyer, speaking against the amendment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do share some of the concerns that Councillor Bronwyn Petrie has raised, but by supporting this amendment today, all we're doing is taking the decision-making process way out to February, because that'll be the first council meeting we can do anything about it. We're in caretaker mode in next month's meeting, I believe. So there can be no decision made on that. So if we support the recommendation today, as the CEO and Kylie have both said, we allow them to go away and work out whether they actually do have an agreement and sign a lease. If they don't agree on what's been offered or asked for by Backtrack, RFS can say, sorry, you didn't tell us the right information at the start. We can't accept what you're proposing, and the lease collapses within the next 2 weeks, not the next 4 months. So I'll be voting against the amendment simply because we need to allow this to go forward as quickly as possible if it can be done, because the future of our youth is more important than nitty-gritty in the detail of this contract.
Thanks, Councillor. Turn to the speakers against the amendment. No other speakers against the amendment. Councillor Berry, yes?
Mr. Mayor, I was going to move amendment where it would have just made the waters a bit further. It would have been involved council along the similar lines to Councillor Petrie's, but given the fact that, like Councillor Sewell said, it'll take it out. Sawyer said it'll take. Sorry, Craig.
Call me Barry. Sorry, Councillor.
It'll take it out further, like to February.
Yep.
And, I don't think we should go down that path. And I don't think council should be involved with a private agreement.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bronwyn Petrie, closing comment to deal with the amendment.
Yes, can I ask a question? In part 3 of this recommendation, in brackets, it says inside the RFS compound.
Yep.
Does the RFS licence at the moment take over all of Lot 1?
The service agreement has attached to it attachment listing the land and buildings included, and it just said 3 Francis Street. That's the only description that's in that agreement. So it doesn't mention lot on plan description.
Well, I just wanted to know that if this amendment is lost, how we can alter this other amendment, this other thing, to allow, because of time being of the essence for these kids,
well, what are we
to
doing?
allow for so yes, okay. So in my closing comments, I in the last few days, having tried to sort this out and get a good outcome for these kids and an operationally effective outcome for the RFS, who on site have said it just will not work, where as proposed, and both the local captain who had to agree, give agreement to the regional manager at Glen Innes in the first place, have both been under the, that agreement was based on their belief it was 2 containers side by side with minimal access, just of a morning and of an afternoon to take gear and put gear back, not what is actually proposed. And that's why I was asking for it to be deferred. So, because there's too much at stake here.
Okay. Right, the amendment's up there, councillor. It's been moved by Councillor Bromwich briefly, seconded by Councillor Nish, that the item 25/21 be deferred until an on-site inspection with the captain of the Steinbrook Brigade and the acting manager of RFS Glenans. All in favour? Against? Amendment's lost. We'll put up the office of recommendation from page 42, councillors.
I'll put up in a minute.
In fairness, councillor, I just dealt with one amendment.
To what's now going forward. This is what's now going forward.
To do with what, councillor?
Number 3, where it says within the RFS compound. I'd like to delete that in brackets because I still think there's opportunity for lot 1 to have this, for lot 1 to have the backtrack complex be put north of the fence. And if you won't agree to that, can we add part 5, which says meantime, council investigate.
Cool your heels just for a moment. I just asked for a bit of advice here.
Sorry, I'm just seeking.
No, you're right, because I'm going to seek that advice I'll get on. She's seeking advice about changing that, councillor. That's all. Bear with me.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was just trying to allow some opportunity.
If
that falls apart, that there's a back.
I understand what you're trying to do.
That's pretty much it, because it's still going down the path of what's with us. I mean, we could request that they undertook a survey of the land, because given how old the agreement is, there's probably no survey, which is why we have to go on the compound. So we could ask them to formalise the land in question prior to yeah, but they're considered in terms of issuing a licence. We can ask for that in the terms if the terms are adopted. Sorry, not trying to
no, we'll give you time because it's important. So Councillor Petrie has asked to take that. So correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Petrie, to take within the NSW RFS compound, take that out of number 3.
So it just reads lot 1.
So that's what I was going to say. We could possibly request that in action in that agreement that a survey was undertaken over the land in question for the service agreement to verify the footprint of that, because I suggest that the agreement's probably quite old, that where we've put up the boundary fences, where we assume the boundary fence is, they may actually have more land available to them. That's just what they've actually developed under that licence, if it only includes that particular lot.
That doesn't help us out if this agreement falls over with the RFS. I want to allow, because as I said, there's no meeting, as Councillor Sawyer said, there's no meeting until February, 12th of February, that there's an opportunity there that if the RFS cannot agree to what is proposed, that there's an opportunity for Backtrack to come to an agreement to that land on the north of the fence. Now, whether that's with RFS or with council, we need to have this in here today, because it's obviously a site that is available other than for some council pipes.
Mr. Mayor,
with Councillor
with this agreement we've got now going forward, we should be able to tidy anything up in the November meeting, because we're not actually doing anything. We just should be tidying things up. So I don't know a problem if something comes back to the November meeting, but as long as it's not a major change.
And I note your comments, Councillor. Just got to deal with the request from Councillor Petrie to take that out, and whether it's doable or not. I understand what you're trying to do, Councillor.
It's just that if it's not RFS, that northern chunk, if it's not RFS, then this agreement will not cover it. We would have to ensure it's
waiting for advice from our staff.
While they're chatting, my suggestion was to add a 5 to say council investigate siting Backtrack on the northern side of the RFS compound. That's it.
Bear with me.
So I guess in terms of going back to what Councillor Petrie is talking about with that particular lot, but where we've got a part lot, just correct me if I'm wrong there, but we don't have a survey at this point in time that actually designates the footprint that is under our RFS agreement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So by undertaking that, council issue the licence following a survey being conducted to an addendum or as an addendum to that license agreement may in fact identify some part or all of the land to the north of the current enclosure may be part of that agreement. We don't know that because we haven't got a survey of the site where we've originally issued the lease over it. So there's an opportunity, I guess, to get the surveyor down there to actually pop in the pegs and to formalise what's under our survey agreement at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm just working off memory, but as I said, the Schedule 1 description is only 3 Francis Street.
Yep. Yep.
So that's all. That's it.
So what we're saying is the ambiguity is actually created by the forms on the land at this point in time defining a boundary as opposed to an identified lot or agreement boundary with the RFS, so based on what's currently there. So if we were to get a survey of that site, we would categorically, I guess, amend or further refine the lease to the RFS to include the land as surveyed for the new licence.
Do you mean north of the compound?
If we got a surveyor, we could actually have them survey and peg out what that particular lot is. Because remember, not all of our cadastral information is as accurate as we'd like without an actual ident survey. And so at this point in time, the proposed officer's recommendation actually reads that it was, within that compound, I guess, for east, so they've licensed over that particular area. What we could actually look at is whether or not we survey that area and extend the licence area to the RFS under their agreement, which would still put the proposed agreement between RFS and Backtrack subject to their continued negotiation over larger footprint.
Providing we delete these words that in brackets within the New South Wales RFS compound. The fence, so I guess it's a little bit semantic. I don't really actually have a problem if you take that out. However, the compound may grow, is what I'm saying. That's so exactly the compound's right. Not actually defined. It's just a fence on the land, which at the moment is the land under their usage, which they may well be licensed for more land than they're actually using.
Yep.
Yeah, which I'm saying take it out because Lot 1 remains.
Yeah, I'm happy to access it. There's no need for a motion. We'll remove that as the officer's recommendation.
Right, with concurrence with the staff. Do it. 3, I think it's okay.
Delegate authority to enter into within the, or you can have within the New South Wales agreement as surveyed, if you want it.
In 3, Carl?
Yeah.
Yep.
Delegate authority to enter into a new licence over part of lot section 1 identified as licensed to the RFS.
If we just left it as is, without adding extra words and just took the other out, that would also cover if that land isn't RFS but is council. It says delegated authority to the chief executive to enter into a new licence over part of lot 1, subject to summarised terms and conditions, blah, blah, blah. And then you're covered both ways. You're covered with RFS by deleting the bracketed within the compound, and you're covered by council because of lot 1. Just keep it simple.
Yep.
What I don't know is whether or not, without going back and do the survey, whether it is only over part of that lot though. So the RFS may not actually license the whole lot, but we can do that.
Yep. So leave it as is.
Except for the take out the brackets.
Yeah, take out the brackets.
Yep. Righto. Councillor Rogan, I apologise.
Take that review.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, the hand's been up for a while, and I think I might have missed some of the things that Kylie's just been talking about, so I'm a little bit unsure what is going to happen here. But what I wanted to just comment on was item 3. I just believe that those words within brackets should be just left out of there, because what we're really doing is delegating the CEO the authority to negotiate a new licence agreement, and that would be subject to the terms of those agreement, but it doesn't have to be within the compound. So we should get rid of that, and that just opens it up to be with anywhere within that lot. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor, and that area we're talking about could be in that anyway, but we'll find out. Councillors, there's been enough on this now. We're going to put the officer's recommendation with that change. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we'll move on to page 48. It's to do with item EC 015/21, supply of quarry materials for miscellaneous works tender, RFT 02/21/22. Can I move in a second here, please? Councillor Brian Murray, thank you. And second by Councillor Sawyer, and thank you. And I'll hand over to Fiona Keneally to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. As Council knows, we have quite a substantial program of construction and reconstruction works that are happening over the Shire in the next few years, thanks to the grant funding. We've gone to tender because some of these works actually require a variety of the types of ratings of materials for the jobs. We've looked at locations right across the Shire so that we can determine best value for money, hence why we're actually recommending putting a panel tender in place. So job by job, we can determine what is best value for money for council.
Thanks, Fiona. Any questions to Fiona to do with the tender process? The recommendations there, councillors, all happy to accept. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, move on to page 52. Your hard copy, EC 016/21, engineering policies redundant. Can I move in a second to deal with this item, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Councillor Berry is a seconder, thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to Fiona Keneally.
I'll hand over to
Oh, Dave, I apologise, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, we just have a list of policies here that were included into the road asset management plan when we reviewed it last year. These were pretty much just fairly simple 2 or 3 line statements. So they've now been...
You're gone, Dave.
Lost him. He's frozen.
No, we're going to permanent picture of him. I know what's happened, mate. It's not a good picture either.
And they was definitely a bad time.
Yeah. You're right. You want to start again?
Start again.
Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah, so these policies are now redundant because the detail of them has been included in the road asset management plan that was adopted earlier in the year. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Questions today to do with the report? No questions, councillors? I apologise, Councillor Berry. I'll come to you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Berry.
Yeah, indeed. The policy about replacing curb gutter with granite blocks. Have we ever replaced any granite blocks of late?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't, but we do have some granite remaining, Miles Street near the church. So we do have some there where we want to maintain those, and that's included in that new road asset management plan, pretty much word for word what this policy said anyhow.
Dave, Councillor Brian Murray, you've indicated a question.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yep, just for clarification, what we're looking at here now, these are all redundant, but effective they are coming back in the next year.
They're in another policy.
Was there any change?
They're in another document. They sit in the road asset.
With no change to what we're reading here.
No, the road asset management plan's already been adopted by council.
Thank you.
If anything, Councillor Murray, probably making it more efficient with the change than what this is.
Agreed.
Okay, any more questions, councillors? No more questions. All in favour of the recommendation, councillors? Against? Carried. Page 55, councillor, in your hard copy, it's item EC 017/21, engineering policy updates. Try and move in a second to deal with this one, please. Councillor Brian Murray is a mover, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Berry is a seconder, and I will hand over to Dave again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These remaining engineering policies are due for a review. We're updating them pretty much just doing update titles of staff. They weren't included in the road asset management plan because they do have some other issues of their nature, probably relating to other legislation. And also they'll probably relate to issues of financial contribution, the actual arranging of the payments, things like that. In time, our intention is probably to review them though to see if we can refine them and include them in a future review of the road asset management plan, and hopefully streamline that whole process for the public so that they can go to a one-point source to get their information. The only thing I would flag with
Bear with you a bit, Dave. You're frozen in motion again. Probably not a real good photo here.
It's probably, yep.
Very good.
Yep, you got me. Apologies for that.
Yeah, mate.
Yes, so the policy relating to property accesses and the public gates and grids, it is our intention to seek to do a review of those policies probably in more detail, but we're probably looking in 6 months' time. They're, in the engineering department, we would like to see those policies streamlined and probably put to public consultation just to sort out some of the details, and so that we can work with landowners and residents when they're dealing with these policies. But for the time being, we're not actually changing them. We're just updating the names of the chief executive and that sort of thing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dave. Question to Dave to do with the report, Councillor Berry.
With number E, Dave, I've had a lot of complaints about that one with you get a dead end road and somebody's got to maintain or make a grid or a gate that'll take a B double or something like that. I think that one should be looked at ASAP, not in the future sometime.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that comment, and certainly agree to that point that some of those issues with gates and public grids, we would like to work with the landowners to actually make it more of a, while we do have legislative requirements to make the roads safe for the road users, I think we have to try and work with the landowners to encourage them to upgrade them and fix them across the network. It's just that probably over Christmas, at the moment, it's probably not a particularly good time to put the thing out for public display and seeking comment from the public, but certainly it's something we'd like to work on. We would like to actually refine our drawings as well. So we'd like to refine our driveway drawings, and particularly our cattle grid drawings, so there's a bit more detail there and clarify them a bit more.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor John McNish.
Thanks, Dave. Just about the disposal of minor assets. How are they disposed of?
Mr. Mayor, councillors, generally the assets, we look to dispose of them through public auction. So there's a couple of companies that deal with online auctions, and that way there's probity and equity for everybody that wants to tender and bid for an item.
I thought that's we're talking about a certain online auction house. Some years ago, we had a massive auction over there at the depot. We called for tenders for 3 local auctioneers. Whoever go, I think who it was, they got the least interest they would charge us, got the job. And things like old guardrail went for better than almost new price. All the copies around the place, grabbed up for cattle yards and so on. I'd like to see us having about one big auction, or perhaps 2 a year, where we do get rid of all the surplus stuff, and locals get the opportunity to purchase it. Like we all need cattle rail for our cattle yards, we all need pipes with different roads on our properties, and it'd be a good PR exercise, and we'll probably make as much doing it locally as we do online. But I don't know, I don't go onto it online much, but I don't know when these auctions are, and there's some things I would like to have got over some of that timber from the old sale yards that was replaced with the cattle rail. But I believe it went for very, very, very cheap prices. So I'd like us to look at doing it locally. Give the local farmers or local people an opportunity, plus supports local businesses. They get the opportunity to get commission on the sale.
Mr. Mayor, I can probably comment, councillors, at the moment we do have a fairly large area of materials in the Riley Street depot that we have prepared, or we're preparing for an auction. We have a company picked out, and I think just with COVID and issues like that, that's delayed the process probably for about 6 months now. We do want to have that sale to clear some space basically in the yard and try to tidy up the depot. So that's sort of in train. We haven't really had an auction though for probably at least a year. So it's been well over a year since we've actually had an auction anyhow. But what I would like to say is that going forward, I would see that
You've just froze again, Dave. Sorry, mate.
I had a question.
Councillor Bob, I do know you've got your hand up, and I'll come to you. I'll just wait for Dave to come unfrozen. Councillor Bob.
Okay, thank you.
There you back, Dave. No, you froze again.
Should we check it's not rigor mortis?
Now you back again, Dave?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're right.
I was just replying that I think I've got to the bit where we were actually arranging a sale. We have got a lot of equipment or bits and pieces of pipes and pavers and odds and sods in the yard there. We are arranging a sale. But I think going forward, we'd like to try and tidy up our projects as we go, like repurpose the items or reuse them at the time, and not just accumulate a lot of surplus material. I think we need to streamline our works as we go rather than accumulate a lot of auctions. So I would think the auctions have become less and less into the future.
Dave, thanks for your comments. We'll go to Fiona for some comment. Councillor, yes, I do reckon that it is a great idea, but we need to, I don't know, to take that forward about having an open auction. No, then we have the showground at Roy Street. That's what you're referring to. Yeah. At the depot. Yeah, the depot. Would you like some comment? Yeah.
Oh, look, I just think that the depot is probably not the right place to have public access for an auction. And we probably really need to just analyse how much it's going to cost us to relocate the gear to another location and run the auction. So, but it's certainly something we can look at in the future.
Councillor Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I've got a question for David, or in general.
Yep.
The item that refers to property access, so I'm talking about driveways and that sort of stuff. Now, some time back, I know that David's aware, there's been some issues surrounding, I guess, the historical aspect of access. So what I'm talking about is when, I guess, orders are issued to have certain access brought up to a certain standard, repairs or whatever. If it's like that before the current occupier was there, I'd like to see consideration given. I'd like to see that in the policy. I know David spoke about the intention is to have down the track some public consultation. I was, though, under the understanding that this sort of thing in particular was to come to a council workshop, and I believe that hasn't happened. And I have followed up and asked that question a couple of months back, and the reply was that simply haven't had time. We still haven't seen those things at a council workshop. I'd certainly like to see that before these policies are firmed up. So my question is to David, if he could clarify what's going on there. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, before we go to you, Dave, Councillor Bob, are you just referring to the public gates and vehicle bypass? Is that your question?
No, it's about driveway access into properties and that sort of thing in general, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Dave?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, councillors, certainly I agree. Our intention is that we will come back to a workshop. Apologies for the delay in that, but our intention is still that we would come back to a workshop with councillors before we put it out on this public display for comment, because I understand there will be some issues there to be discussed, and some of it comes down to technical details. That some of it's just the actual process of how we go about it.
Thank you, Doug.
So
you have a question?
We are still intending to come back to council through a workshop, improve our drawings so that they're a bit more explanatory for the public and try to make it a bit more understandable, and then work through them with the councillors first and then to the public.
Pictures are always the go. Drawings are always good, Dave.
Mr. Mayor, at the moment we have a multitude of different drawings, and that's probably the main hold-up, Councillor Rogan, at the moment, is that we're actually looking to redraw our drawings so that we put pretty much most of the information onto the drawing. And our current letters and our current procedures go out with almost a legal jargon that, and it's numerous pages. We'd like to streamline that as much as possible so that the people doing the work as well as the property owners can understand it a lot more simply.
Thanks, Dave. Councillor Bromman, you've indicated a question to do the report. It's Dave or Fiona.
Yes, thanks. Councillor Berry asked me one regarding the grids, but the construction and maintenance of property access from council roads, minimum width of 4 metres is required. Is that a 4 metre gate or 4 metre to actually turn in and out of?
No, Councillor, that's actually the width that the property entrance at the end of the driveway where it has to be constructed.
As it comes off the bitumen.
As it comes off. Yep. Any more questions to do with the report? No more questions. Councillor reports there. All in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, would you like to break for a little lunch?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Can I have a move to suspend standing orders, please?
Yes.
Councillor Brian Murray, second, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. There you go. Councillor Bob, Councillor Mike, we're just going to break for a little lunch.
Okay, no worries, thank you.
About 20 minutes.
Okay.
Oh. Just Councillor, while
pause that recording for a sec, please.
Thank you.
All good, Kristen?
No, just for a minute.
Okay, councillors, we'll move back into our meeting. Can I have a motion to resume standing orders, please? Okay. Councillor Brian Murray, thank you. Second, please. Second, Councillor Peters, thank you. All in favour? Again, carried. Councillor Bob and Councillor Michael, you're online. Can you hear us well?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Thank you. Okay, councillor, back to our hard copy. And thanks for having morning tea and sharing with our staff. It's always good morning tea. Page 58 in your hard copy, councillors. EC 018/21, so Rail Network Safety Interface Agreement. Move the second here, please. To deal with this one, Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second, Councillor Bromman, thank you. Actually, yeah. Councillor Bob, I apologise. I'll get you next time. I won't forget you. I'll hand over to Dave Council to present this report. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, we've been advised that we have a change coming in the new year in January of the rail manager for the rail infrastructure network on behalf of ARTC. It has been John Holland in the past, and that's.
You froze. You just froze, Dave.
You're always getting it back.
I don't know.
Or is that so?
Might be because you're sitting next to
it. He's looking at you, Councillor.
This policy.
You're back, mate.
It's pretty much just going to be the existing agreement. This issue relates to the safety of rail crossings. So they might be formed roads, but they might be other matters. We do have infrastructure such as pipelines that go out into the railway area. And if we're going to do any maintenance or work there, we need to make sure we comply with safety in regard to the rail network. And this is irrespective of the...
Well, that's a different look now.
Just froze again, Dave.
Maybe if he turns his video off, he won't use as much.
You back, Dave?
Yeah, I'm back. Apologies. I think I covered it all. It's pretty much just renewal of the existing agreement with a new company, UGL Regional Links.
Yep. Thanks, Dave. I'll go to questions. I'll go to Councillor Sawyer first. Councillor Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think we should take the opportunity to welcome the new operator of the maintenance and safety and everything like that, and welcome them to the role and start off a good relationship by advising them that the heritage list at Sunnyside Bridge should be a priority for them, point out that it is in danger of falling into the creek, and the previous maintenance manager's approach to maintenance and safety was to put a fence around to stop people getting anywhere near it. So I think we should welcome them into the role and point out our interest in that bridge and start a new battle with them.
To support your what you're speaking about, Councillor Sawyer, and I'm bouncing off you, Mr. CEO or Cobb, in the officer's recommendation, would it be appropriate to tag that on to the officer's recommendation? I'm just trying, so it's public record.
I'll second that.
Just second
that. It's an agreement. I would suggest that if it is a point of interest that somebody move a motion to, acknowledge the contents of the report and to draft correspondence to the newly appointed.
So make it as a separate item?
Yeah. So because you're exercising an agreement, which is the issue, and at the same time you're talking about something. So whilst they're interlinked, the nexus is a bit loose.
What I will do too, and because before I go back to Councillor Sawyer, why I'm so supportive, because this council, over this 5-year period and before, not even throwing the previous council, have been so passionate about doing something to that bridge, and we have had terrible with John Holman Group and the response we've received from them to do absolutely nothing about it, although acknowledging it. And I think it's so important. So I'm very supportive of Councillor Sawyer and doing this. So we'll tidy it up now, Councillor Sawyer, and we'll do it as one underneath that. And I'm serious about it going in public record in our council papers that this is there. So it's on public record. So we'll tidy it up, Councillor, just with the word if you could, please.
Mr. Mayor, before you tidy this up, can I talk to you about, there is an ongoing, through you, Mr. Mayor, there is an ongoing agreement between Heritage and they have visited on at least 3 occasions.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Talking about the bridge.
Yep.
So, and it's still ongoing.
Yeah. So well, this would be only supporting that anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
But thank you. But Councillor Sawyer, we'll tidy that up just with the wording as one.
Right to whatever their name is.
It's just the microphone, Councillor. Apologise.
So we'll get the hang of this.
No, you're right.
Right to UGL, whatever their name is, and welcome them into the new contract and point out our interest and history with this bridge with the previous maintenance operator, and request a meeting with them at the earliest convenience after the commencement of the contract to look at ways of getting that bridge repaired.
As a priority.
As priority.
Name
the bridge as Sunnyside.
Just bear with me, councillors. I just want to tidy this up. I'm happy to take comments about it all.
And highlight council's
interest.
Up the full point. I don't point out, and highlight council's interest in the restoration.
Mr. CEO, do we need that like as an amendment moved by the two councillors, or is it appropriate to put it in there just as that?
No, it needs to be an amendment. Yep. We're just working on the words for that.
So I'm going to take you as a move, obviously, Councillor Sawyer, and I'll take you as a second, Councillor Brown.
I'm just interested in the restoration and maintenance of the Sunnyside Rail Bridge.
Yeah. If you want to strengthen it, you might say councillor's keen interest. Just as
I'll come in.
Welcome then to the new contract and highlight council's keen consideration of the restoration and maintenance of the Sunnyside Rail Bridge as an important heritage asset within the region.
I'll get you to Councillor Sawyer to mail over that. I'll just in fairness, I'll go to me two video people. Obviously, councillors, we know we're passionate about this. Councillor Mike, I'll go to you first, then I'll go to you, Councillor Bob. Councillor Michael Petrie.
Yeah, that Sunnyside Bridge, I think we should add that one at out at the bluff there in it too. It's twice as big a bridge, and it's a lot more than would mean more to the town than that one at Sunnyside, really. If they make sure they have it, you add that one into the job too. That's all.
This amendment. Well, I've got no problem with that.
Yeah.
Chair of the meeting, councillor, the moving the second. Happy to throw the Bluff Bridge in it too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Good. Thanks, councillor Mike.
Bridge, that one out there, if you see it.
Thanks, councillor Patrick. Councillor Bob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, my comment was going to be in the same vein as everyone else, but I understand that those bridges aren't anything to do with any road interface or service interface or anything like that. But given the heritage and the tourism potential and all of that, it might be grant funding through heritage funds or something that achieves the result, but maybe these UGL could be approached to provide their expertise when it comes to recommendations and quoting and that sort of stuff. So that I just wanted to comment on that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Berry, I'll go to you. Before I do, I don't want to make the orders because of this amendment, but I am coming to you, councillor Sawyer. I'll go to you, councillor Brian Peter is the second to speak, and then you for closing. Okay, councillor Berry.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was speaking to the punch by the culprit, I'll regret there. But no, I fully support that getting that heritage grid listed. But I reckon we should also look at getting the whole railway line from Jennings, we'll say Jennings, Jennings to Tenterfield, and it'd be an amazing tourist attraction if we could get some of that done, so people could actually cross the bloody train and come down to Tenterfield.
Well, in that, councillor, without great, fully support. But we'll deal with this, and when we get them on site, let's have that conversation. Yeah. Get them to actually maintain something or improve. Councillor Tom, I'll go to councillor Sawyer. We just need to tidy up the work so we're all good.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. In a new paragraph after within the region, something along the lines of we request a meeting at the earliest convenience when the contract starts to discuss this option, these proposals or whatever words best. Opportunities, there you go, thank you.
Councillor Peters, I'll go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The bridge over the
bridges.
Over the Bluff that Councillor Petrie brought up, it's a much better bridge than the one out there. No one sees it. It's a magnificent bridge, and unfortunately, it's in a state of terrible disrepair. And a few people sneak in off the highway, and if you happen to be 100 feet above the river and fall in, you're finished because of the decking gone completely. The only way to get along is tiptoeing along the rail, taking your life in your hand. Anyway, definitely look at it. It's a magnificent bridge.
Thank you. Council, before I go to the second and then back to the move of the amendment, any more comment to do with what we're doing here? No, Councillor Bromman, be the second. Did you wish to comment?
Yes, just we need to get rid of the
microphone, please, Councillor.
We need to get rid of the "and" in front of important because we've got two bridges now. Just put as important heritage assets. So get rid of the "an" in front of important.
Oh, yeah.
And add an S on the end of assets. But I would like to add within the region, which require urgent repair, so that they do realise this is actually urgent. Weeds is another issue, but we can deal with that later. And I know Councillor Bob has said we only really deal with them over the interface, but they are responsible for the entire track.
They are.
Not just where we interact with them on the roads. And so that's why this is important I don't think I want to mention weeds, but we can mention that later.
Thanks, Councillor Bromman. Councillor, so I'll go to you for closing comment to do with the amendment.
I'm happy with what I've said. I'm happy with what I've already said.
Thanks, Councillor Sawyer. Okay, Councillor. Councillor Murray, we're going to deal with this amendment. Yep.
Can I speak about what about the third bridge over here in town that they've closed off? The bridge has collapsed.
Hasn't been
I don't know what street that is.
Hasn't been taken away.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I haven't been up there for a long time.
And I think you did be, Councillor, now sound like I'm know. I think it would be in that bypass corridor. You're referring to the one up?
Yes, near Pickwick Clean.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been.
Yeah.
Sparrow's going to burn it anyway.
No, Sparrow actually offered to to put dirt across it to rebuild that, so
Okay.
it was an access,
Anyway.
which is something I've raised several times that we should follow that up with him.
Okay.
But it's a separate.
Let's deal with this, but we've noted that, councillor, and we'll deal with that in another conversation with them. Okay, councillors, the amendment is the council right to UGL Regional Links Limited welcoming them into the new contract and requesting a meeting at the earliest convenience to discuss council's keen interest in the restoration and maintenance of the Sunnyside Rail Bridge and Bluff Rail Bridge and as important heritage assets within the region which require urgent repair.
Just need to get the S off the rail, the Bluff bridges now. Just get it. It's just a bridge.
All good?
Yeah.
Right. Put up the amendment and then we'll deal with the rest. All in favour of the amendment? Against? Carried. The amendment now becomes part of the recommendation. All in favour of the recommendation? Against? Carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Sawyer. Councillor Crom. Righto. Page 64, councillors, in your hard copy. ENB 16/21, Tenterfield Dam Safety Emergency Plan 221. Can I have a move and a second to deal with this one, please? Councillor Verrier, thank you. Second, please. Option. Anyone? Councillor Murray, thank you. And I welcome Julian Merchant to deal with the dam wall safety emergency plan. And hand over to Julian to present this report. Thanks, Julian.
I didn't wish to have my back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report that I've given you guys is quite large. Yeah. So I've given a very short report on it, just to advise you of the changing regulation through dam safety. So it used to be the old Dam Safety Committee, but now they're actually New South Wales Dam Safety. And they've changed a lot of practices, and one of them is how we report. So they require quite a lot of regulation around the reporting systems. Part of that is the emergency plan, which is what you have now. There will be more coming. There's an actual overview document, which is has an operational run, and that's gone through audit with the Dam Safety, New South Wales Dam Safety, and that'll be presented to council in each day. That's pretty much it. So basically, this is an updated report that was done from Public Works initially, and in 2016, and updated to reflect the regulation changes.
Thanks, Gillian. Any questions to Gillian to do with the report, councillors? The report's there for adoption. All happy to adopt? Against? Carried. We'll move on to page 67 in your hard copy, councillors. It's item ENB 17/21, liquid trade and waste policy update. Move in a second to here, please. Move it, please. Councillor Bromwick, you moving? Yeah. Second, please. Councillor Tom Peters, thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to Gillian to present the report.
This report was updated to reflect, again, new regulation changes. And the changes are really more of a date than anything else. So that came in 2021, I believe. So the original policy that went to council needed updating to reflect the regulation changes.
Thank you, Gillian. Any questions to Gillian to do with the report, councillors? No. The report's there for adoption, councillors. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to, since we've got Gillian here, if we could just ask for an update on the new water treatment plant. Is that acceptable, or we do that later in the operating?
We'll do it in the we're going in the monthly operational report now, councillor. Fair question. And I think it'll be appropriate to do it there. Okay, council, page 72 in your hard copy, GOV 65/21. Monthly operation report for September. Move the second, please. Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Second by Councillor Berry. And I'll hand over to CEO Mr. Darryl Buckingham to present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, basically, the recommendation is that Council receives and notes the status of the monthly operation report for September 2021, but happy to take any questions. As as indicated.
To be fair, Councillor, I'll come to you, Councillor Berry. Question, Councillor Brian Petrie, dealing to do with the, yep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Janine, if you could just update us as to the water treatment plan, which I think had a February, maybe possible finish time.
We're pretty much on track. We've had a couple of delays with COVID and steel prices have increased, as you know, and we're pushing through all the documents now. So we're nearly at the 95% stage, which means it goes then to the DPIE to get approved for Section 60. They're all ready to go when they receive the documents. They're actually going to do a week of meetings so that they can resolve any issues that they do have, which I can assure you that we've resolved pretty much every issue that they have. We do have a clause in there where they could start work early, so you will see some groundworks happening. There's a machine up there at the moment and they have the site. I believe we're pretty much on track for the February opening at this stage.
Good. Thank you. John.
I just add to that. February, it's actually end of April opening at the moment. So the funding is for the end of the financial year. Our projected aim at the moment is that it be completed and proof of performance testing happening in April of next year.
Just before I go to you, Councillor Berry, you've indicated questions to this to do with the monthly report. Councillor, I just want to note the Julie's just touched on it, and it's what we need to be appreciative. I don't know we are as a council, but all the little bits and pieces that before we actually kick dirt and get a machine out there, that our staff have to go through to do with government regulations, legislation, and whatever. So it is noted, Julian, and to Fiona, I know how much you go through. Us as a council sitting wondering why isn't something happening, you know, not as a derogatory statement, because the community asked us as a whole to do the stuff and the conversations I had with staff, and to know the highs and lows and all the bits and pieces and the bumps and whatever you've got to go through. So it is appreciated, big time. So I know it's not easy.
You're correct, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for those comments. I'll pass them on because everyone will be appreciative.
Please do. I totally understand.
And I'll just add to the water treatment plant. There's a whole lot of fabrication and manufacturing that's taking place at this point in time. So just because there's not much happening out on site, back in the manufacturing and fabrication side of things, it is all happening because at the 90-95% design, they've pretty much been given approval to move forward with most of their work.
They've got modules.
Yeah.
Councillor Vera.
We have actually also received the UV equipment that's actually been installed in the depot at the moment as well.
So there's plenty going on. Yep. All good. Councillor Vera, I apologise.
Page 35 on the graph there, business statistics. In the little box at the corner, I can't quite read it. It says environmental. What's all that about?
35 and 102, Councillor. Yeah. So which graph are you referring to?
Referring to all the graphs.
In business statistics?
Yeah, what's the environmental got to do with business statistics? And I think it's in it only. I can't quite read the others.
Oh, it's the, what would you call it, light blue, Councillor?
Like spillage, oils and things, isn't it?
It's the recording of the risks to all the claim statistics where we've had a near miss or whatever in different areas under the workforce statistics at this point in time, so the risk factors.
So they're all pointing to one graph types and the other.
So this might be the first time you've seen it. I think what Wes has done, I'm sorry I haven't had interrogated, I'm only trying to shed some light on that one, but it goes across quarters, across the bottom of the page. And what it's actually showing you is, I guess, those incidents by their nature and claimable items and how they've actually reduced and impacted on council's claims experience at this point in time. So the first one, I think, from memory, was a brief look, is 2019. Yes. And that actually shows you some of those claims that we've had. And I suggest in 2019, one of those claims may well have related to an issue with sewage that we had back then. So that shows you, I guess, the quantum and how those risks are being managed over a period of time.
So that green there would reflect the environmental side of the sewage bill.
No, that's property.
It's property theft and damage, loss and damage.
Sorry, so as the property, sorry, I'm not reading anything. So environmental is the light colour in 2019, so right down the bottom. 2019, that little blip on the graph, so that's the incident down at the very bottom. Property theft, loss and damage is the large green section at the top. Incident only is incident reporting statistics, which are in the blue, and we're quite pleased when we see those increase, because that means we get a better understanding of the risks and how we can mitigate those from the incidents versus the transition into a claim. Near miss is a little bit the same. That's our warning bell that goes off that says we've got a problem, we need to address something that we're doing across our operations to make sure that those near misses don't actually turn into claims. And then we've got the personal injury claims in there as well.
On the good story, councillor. You go from 2019 to 221. What a change in the graph.
Yeah, for an old bloke like me, I just like to see that the printing a little bit larger underneath it all.
Any other questions, councillor, do with the monthly report?
On page 85.
Yeah.
Second line from the bottom, rural road rehabilitation, $0. I'm just wondering why it's $0 when all this grant money is being paid around.
And over you, Fiona, can you handle that one?
That's a line item for council funded road rehabilitation, which we have $0 for this year. So where you see grants, it'll be a specific line.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. Yeah. Councillor, that's your questions, Councillor Berry?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillor, to start to deal with the monthly report? I apologise, Councillor McNish.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Page 49.
Yep.
In the report by the noxious weeds officer.
Yeah.
He said it's spraying fireweed in September. All the research I've done quite a bit on it because I've got a heap of it out home, is you spray it in autumn. I'd like to know if he did it in September, has he got some new product out or something like that, which means you can spray it all year round? It's going to be the biggest curse in this whole Shire very shortly, the way it's taking over. And I think we have to be a little bit proactive here and try and get rid, especially on the road reserve. It's everywhere. But I just wanted to see where he sprayed in September. You probably need to take it on notice, Kylie, do you?
Look, I certainly do. I can cover off on a few things, but not that one. So I'll actually just provide an update to council about one, the timing for spraying fireweed, and also to where we actually sprayed in September.
I was asking also what he used and if it was successful.
Good question, Councillor. Any other questions to do with the monthly report? If not, the monthly report's there to receive and note. All in favour? Again, carried. Page 73 in your hard copy, councillors. GOV 66/21, disclosure of interest returns to 2021. Moving a second here, please. Councillor Berry, thank you. Second by Councillor Forbes, and I thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to refer to this large blue folder here, just to note that I had tabled the disclosure of interest returns for the period 2020-2021. If any of you would like some light reading, it's available for your request.
Questions to the CEO? Document's been tabled, councillors. All in favour? Hence, carried. Councillors, page 76 in your hard copy. It's item GOV 67/21. Council recess period 2/21/2020. Delegation to the Chief Executive leave period, Mayor, Civic, ceremonial duty, proposed council meeting dates. Can I have a move in a second here, please? Hey, so Councillor Bob and Councillor Mike, you happy to move in second? I'll take as the mover, Councillor.
Yay, of course.
And I'll take as a second to Councillor Michael. You're on the record. I apologise. And I hand over to our CEO to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to the timing of the election and all of the other challenges we've had this year in terms of dates, I just want to draw council's attention to the 6 points and 3 sub-points in the recommendation. I guess one is the close down period for staff from 17 December 2021 to 4th January 2022. Note that council elections are held on the 4th of December 2021 and are likely to be declared between the 21st and 23rd December 2021, and the elected positions are vacant during this period. Resolved to hold the first meeting of council on the 12th of January 2022 with the following dates for meetings as follows, just trying to get ahead of the curve here. Ordinary council meetings to be held each month of the calendar year with the exception of January 2023. The council meetings be held on 4th Wednesday of the meeting month at a time to be determined, and the exception of December 2022, which be held on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. And the extraordinary council meetings to be held each month in the Corella room, council administration building, with the exception of 2 meetings to be held, one at Drake and one at Urbanville. And item 4, pursuant to section 377 of the Local Government Act 1993, delegate authority to the Chief Executive and the Chief Corporate Officer, who may be acting as Chief Executive in the absence of the Chief Executive, jointly to exercise any function of council during the recess period, with the exception of determining applications for all dwelling types and ancillary structures where significant objections have been received, rezoning matters, subdivision applications, and entering into leases and licences. Number 5 is that a full list of any matters considered under such delegated authority be submitted for council's information on the first 2022 ordinary council meeting of council to be held on the 23rd of February 2022. And finally, item 6, that council grants civic and ceremonial authority to the mayor during the period of 4 December 2021 and 12 January 2022. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions to the CEO to do with this report? No? Okay. So the report's there. Council, all in favour? Against? Carried. Question for all councillors, move to page 90 in your hard copy. Item GOV 68/21 to do a council induction and core training program. Can I move and second the deal with this one, please? Move and second, please. Councillor Murray, thank you. Second by Councillor Sawyer, and I thank you. I will hand over to you, Liv, to present this. Okay. Well,
thank you. I just note that I've organised an induction for the new councillor with the Office of Local Government on Monday the 17th and Tuesday the 18th of January 2022. So there's a typo there, sorry. And note that the date of Wednesday the 12th of January 2022, we calculated with all the election and different dates that we could have our council induction day that day, and so there'll be, you know, oath of office, affirmation of office, meeting dates, and committee representations would do so on that day. That's basically what's reported.
Okay. No questions, councillors. The report's here to be noted. All in favour? Against? Carried. Move on to page 92 in your hard copy, councillors. It's GOV 69/21. Youth Pacific Purpose Community Project Engagement Committee. I'll be moving a second here, please. Councillor Berry, I thank you. Second by Councillor Forbes, I thank you. And we'll go, please, I'll hand over to you, Fiona. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. As Council knows, we have received funding through the New South Wales Public Spaces Legacy Program. The purpose of this report is for Council to consider a proposed addition to the committee register, being a specific purpose committee for the Tenterfield Youth Precinct and Mountain Bike Trailhead Stakeholder Advisory Committee, which would be a short-term committee to engage with the community on the outcomes that the community desire for that precinct. The recommendation is there, and the representation that's considered appropriate from the officer's point of view is a councillor, council's project manager, who will be the committee chairperson, council's community development officer, a Moonbaleen Land Council member, being that 1 or 2, Tenterfield High School school captains, and representatives from the Tenterfield cycling community, and council officers as required for the work that is happening at the time.
John, thank you. Mr. CEO or Kyle, am I of the opinion with the report, do we need to nominate the councillor here today?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. So there needs to be a A motion moved to nominate a councillor to participate on that.
That's, but all the other documents, that's not to do with this item. Like to fill in the rest of the docs.
So that constitutes, so we would make applications for those groups asking them to nominate
a
representative that the council needs to nominate the councillor, who should be the council rep on that for inclusion in the committee. So like with our advisory committees, we would then write to those individual groups that are identified and ask them to put forward a nomination.
Should it be noted, and only coming from a debrief, pre-brief to do with the business paper yesterday, that the mayor's ex officio on all committees, that should that be noted there, that the mayor's also included in that?
Once again, I suppose we've just included it as a, because it's only a short purpose committee, we're actually expecting about 2 or 3 meetings to provide input into that process to make sure we've covered off on all of the community desires. So this is a little bit different to some of the committees that we have, which are more long-running advisory committees. This is a project advisory committee, this one. So as I said, the mayor would be welcome to attend any of those functions as per usual.
Well, okay.
So, sorry, through the mayor, just want to mention that Auntie Helen did request that they have an elder as a representative and a junior person as a representative rather than just one person.
Should that be noted in the business paper, Mr. CEO?
Yes, it should be.
Okay. We want to tidy that up now?
Yep, might as well.
So it read Moonbeam LA LC times 1, 1 elder, 1 youth. Simple as that. Yep. Yep. It's into the report.
So that there will be a motion moved in minutes. So there'll be an amendment proposed.
Okay. Councillors, what I'm doing is we're going to asking for a nomination for the council representative on this committee.
I've got time on the council.
Rather than you do that, Councillor Brom, I'll go with the nominators. So shows got a bit of support in the room. Okay. So Councillor Brom and Petrie. Councillor Brom and Petrie has been nominated by Councillor McGish, seconded by Councillor Sawyer as a council representative. Yep. And
the special purpose engagement committee.
Yep.
To include 2 representatives comprising an elder and younger person.
Okay. So, Councillor, I'll take this an amendment. So I'll take Councillor McNish with concurrence and Councillor Sawyer's moved and seconded to the amendment. Okay. So we go through the process to each move or second to speak to the amendment. Okay, all good.
That's what I'm in terms of the process. Is we're going to move an amendment. So what's the move
So, okay. So, councillors, the amendments there, all in favour of the amendment? Against? Carried. Now we put the whole officer's recommendation. All in favour? Apologise.
The officer's recommendation minus number 2, so that the amendment becomes number 2.
Right. At the bottom. Apologise, Colin.
And then we put the whole lot. Yeah.
You have to put Councillor Petrie in there as well.
Yes, so we've just got those question marks. Hang on, we're just going to start.
It should be in the amendment.
So down the amendment.
Oh, I apologise, Councillor Bell, you are right. The amendment's moved by Councillor McNish and seconded by Councillor Sawyer. Let will slow down. Sawyer, yep, move the amendment. Yep. And to include Councillor Roman Petrie. And to amend the Moonbeam Aboriginal demarcation within a special purpose.
LALC.
Yeah. Engagement committee to include 2 representatives, an elder and a young person.
Then you copy the amendment which becomes number 20.
I'll move the amendment again, then the recommendation, yeah.
Yep, so the amendment's just been moved.
Yep.
So the amendment now becomes part of the motion.
Yep.
That will replace 3.
Yep.
And then we move the whole thing.
Okay.
So Aboriginal out, and just put AC. So put originally and how about? Yep. LAC.
Yeah. What? But that's what I was asking.
Yep.
Well, we're sending invitations out for that.
Take that local out too.
Council project manager. Is what you're talking about?
Take local out. Take that out.
Okay.
That's perfect.
So you want, so okay, do we go through now with the project manager?
It's LALC.
LALC, is it? Sorry, Mike.
Do we go through now with the council's project manager? With a name?
No, they don't usually have names on the committee register. They're designated persons as nominated.
Right.
Just within the report, I've written is that who I considered appropriate for the committee. Yeah. But it's up to council to recommend. So determine the community representation groups or persons to be invited.
All right.
So you can note that from what's within the report.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yes or no?
So the question comes back that we've got a draft. So this is our draft specific purpose stakeholder group at the back in the attachment. Yep. The attachment identifies suggested representation, which is one councillor, of which we've dealt with that. Councillor Bronwyn Petrie has been nominated in the amendment to go forth. We've got council's project manager. Should that be that should be a position because the person may change. Council's community development officer, same thing. Moombaleen, we've identified that they actually wish to make a change to this stakeholder group. So we've actually put in there 2 representatives as they've requested. The high school captains, once again, will be as nominated, they don't get named. And then we put out an expression of interest basically to the cycling community and the mountain bike club to nominate some representatives that they would like, because we wouldn't name them. So
do we need to put this in the recommendations? It only says considered appropriate within the report.
Yes, the answer.
Yes.
So through the mayor, you would have to actually, if the council agrees with the representation, that needs to be the actual, that has to be the motion. Yeah.
Right. So we take
it. If council's happy with that, that's put in there.
So all these dot points, what you're saying, come around into this.
Yes.
Right. No problem at all.
And that change really is the LAC becomes by 2.
Yep.
You could.
Yep.
Potatoes.
Yeah.
You could endorse the specific purpose, the attachment outlining the specific purpose committee with the following amendments, and then that's everything on the green page, which was what we put in there, which is the purpose, the expected outcomes, the responsible officer meetings and the like, or alternatively, if you wish to put it in there, make it very clear. I'm happy to copy those and acknowledge the makeup of that committee as follows.
Happy with that? You know what we're doing?
We're adding an individual too.
Okay. Good. Okay, with those changes and with the nomination of the councillors, the officer's recommendation is there. All happy to move. All in favour? Yes? Yes? Okay, thank you. Well, councillors, move on to page 97 to do with our finance, and it's GOB 70/21 finance and accounts period, ended 30th September. So moving a second to deal with this item. I apologise, Councillor Berry. You want to move that way, Councillor?
Yep. So this is a procedural motion.
So Councillor's been moved by Councillor Berry that we're doing items 70, 71, 72. And 72. All in one. Yep. Got a seconder, please. Councillor Sawyer, I'll take this a seconder. Just don't go away. So we just deal with, just to be fair to you as our finance guru, anything in those 3 reports that you wish to speak to?
Sorry,
yeah, please, President.
So you mean the normal monthly report?
I apologise.
Yep, so we've amalgamated for Jess's understanding. So we have amalgamated
finance and
items
accounts.
70, so finance and accounts.
Capital expenditure report.
Capital expenditure report.
And a report on loan balances.
Yeah, so there is one, so the council intends to move that as a block. So if there's anything in any of those reports
that you wish to speak to, Jess.
Yep. So the first two reports are just our normal monthly reporting. The quarterly loan balance report, the only thing there that's really changed is that we've updated the schedule to show the loan refinancing that went through at the end of last month at the lower interest rate. So that you're seeing the schedule.
And thanks, I must say, with Bay 103 for putting that our debt service cover ratio in there too. Yes, I really appreciate that. Councillors, any questions to Jess to do with those three reports? Councillor Bromwich?
Just one, Mr. Mayor. With our 150 years sesquicentennial thing, and there's no budget for it, and I think that's unfortunately that wasn't done prior to this financial year. Is there no capacity within our cash balances, etc., to have a couple of $1,000s to go towards it? I just find it difficult that we're asking outside entities to support what is a council 150-year achievement celebration. And then you run the risk also that if those people sponsor council for this, then is there a conflict of interest later if they're applying for a tender or something? So I'm just asking, is there some way, have we some capacity in that credit that we have to put $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000, whatever, aside for this really important occasion? Or is it a big deal?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're currently working through the quarterly budget review process with managers, so we haven't spoken yet with the Civic Department, which is Darryl and Libby. So we're speaking about that early next week. So we'll see if we can shift some to them and allow operational account just to help cover that cost.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, guys.
So through the mayor, we've already had that discussion, and we've already identified that Civic will have to kick some money into the budget anyway. I think it'll probably be around $3,000, which hasn't been budgeted for, but we will massage it. So we'll report back to the council and do the budget review. Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. Now the question suggests to do with those three reports, to do with these reports, Councillor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, you tell me if this is relevant or not.
Right.
With the influx of mature age people coming in here, reduction in rates, how does that impact our revenue to a greater degree, or does it impact our revenue income? And should we be having a conversation with the government to upgrade the amount of money we get to compensate for that?
But pension rebate, is that what you're referring to, Councillor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's an ongoing conversation. The state has been, fairly specific in all of their responses for us calling. So at the moment, as I said, it is an amount where we do partner with the state to provide that subsidy. So at this point in time, I don't think that there's a very high appetite, I guess, to increase that subsidy, nor for the state to provide any additional funding to us to increase their contribution at this point in time. The actual rates and charges obviously aren't really impacted by those individuals that are coming here. It's their capacity to pay and whether or not they're able to pay those charges and rates.
Thank you, Councillor. Thanks, Colin. There's no more questions to Jess. We'll all in favour to move the adoption of those three reports. Against? Carried. Thanks, councillors. Move on to page 106, councillors. In your hard copy, item GOV 73/21. Update the 2021 financial statements. Move the seconder here, please. I'll go to the screen. I'll take Councillor Mike Petrie and Councillor Bob as the mover and the seconder. You happy with that, councillors? Thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to Jess to present this report. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is a report to present financial statements again to Council following an update from the audit process. This is just to include a disclosure highlighting that Council had a negative unrestricted cash balance of $1.2 million as of 30th of June 2021, and the auditors have requested that the statements be re-signed and approved by Council. So from the report beginning on page 107, the statements were presented at the last Council meeting in September. This included the statement that council staff expected further guidance from the auditors referring to note C1 and 2 due to negative unrestricted cash balance at the end of the year. This is not an ongoing issue and seems to return to a positive figure. As a result of that audit feedback, we've included a disclosure which can be seen at the top of page 108 and which is in page 35 of the statements. This is to state that council's negative unrestricted cash of 1.2 million represents a breach of the section 409 of the Local Government Act. This is really due to timing differences in the receipt of payments of funds for infrastructure projects in the final quarter of the financial year. And as a result, council will utilise restricted funds to keep these projects progressing without seeking ministerial approval. At 30th of June, council had DRFA, disaster recovery funding, claims in excess of $3 million as contract assets for works delivered during the previous 2 financial years. This fund has since been received to council. So again, these statements are being represented for signing and approval from the council. The root cause of this issue is the result of the timing difference between when council has incurred expenditure on grant funded works and disaster recovery works, and the subsequent delay we have in receiving the cash payments from the various state and federal funding bodies. This is an issue that has previously been reported to council, most recently in the March quarterly budget review. And this is due to the funding structure of many of our grant funded works and DRFA works, wherein cash is received after the expenditure has been incurred. This presents a significant ongoing difficulty for council's treasury management, as our financial system is currently not sophisticated enough to ensure compliance with sections 409 of the Local Government Act. As a result, this issue was only identified during the preparation of the 2021 financial statements. Essentially, it just means that there was some externally restricted cash, so grant funds received for other projects in advance that had to temporarily be used to fund the cash flow of other projects. Further to note, if restricted receivables have been taken into account in the cash balance, so this is the grant works that have been completed but the funding not received, we had $7.417 million of unreceived funds. So it's clearly evident that council had enough assets to meet its restricted cash commitments. The grant funds are already approved according to signed grant agreements, and the council is therefore never at risk of not receiving the funds. So as a result of this requirement for us to get the documents re-signed by council and approved by council, we've written to the Office of Local Government to request an extension to lodge the audited financial statements. This follows a request from the Audit Office specifically that we received on 15th of October. As the auditors have indicated, they cannot guarantee finalisation of the audit report by the submission date of 31st of October. The statements will be forwarded to the Office of Local Government upon the completion of the auditor's report.
Thank you, Jess. Councillors, any questions to Jess to do with the report? Councillor Bowman, to do with the report?
Yeah, no. Yeah. It makes it really difficult for council to have that disaster funding so late in coming to us. I mean, that's 2 financial years that they're behind with $3 million. I see it was successful, the motions to
Local Government
Congress. So what's the next step there, Mr. Mayor, in getting that actually actioned? And there's so much hope in getting it actioned.
What we do from the conferences, they come back to us with correspondence, well, they should be, Local Government New South Wales to the relevant ministers or relevant government officials that they need to go to, those motions. So we just keep pursuing them. So we do with a response, and usually they'll send you a response from whatever department it needed to go to about that. But they were unanimous. And just anyway, is there any more questions to Jess to do with the report? No? Jess, I want to just thank you and the financial team for the great job that you do. I know it's not easy, and I did note to the CEO and the Deputy Mayor yesterday that I don't consider myself an educated person, but I can read this stuff and understand how it's all working. So I really appreciate the fact that you can write it like this and that we can all understand. So I do thank you. Please pass it on to the staff, and the fact that you know that as a council, how hard we work in the second paragraph with 109, which Councillor Roberts just referred to, that you know, we know if we get these things over the line, it won't happen overnight about a change. but it will help all local government in the way that their finances roll if we get these motions supported and get them up. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. Councillors, the reports there. All happy to receive and note? Against? Carried. Councillors, we move on to page 112. It's item RC 24/21. Reports from committees and delegates, Murray Darling Association. Councillor Sawyer, being a delegate, you would be happy to move that way. Second, please. Second, please. Councillor Brodman, thank you. Councillor Sawyer, do you wish to speak to the correspondence there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's fairly self-explanatory. Probably the highlight, and maybe even the low light, is the fact that the current CEO, Emma, has submitted her resignation. She has extended once previously. She's been a real driving force for the association, and she leaves big shoes to fill, but the recruitment process is underway, and hopefully they'll get someone that can do the job equally well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions to Councillor Sawyer to do with the report?
Only that one.
Report. Sorry, Rob.
Only about the CEO.
Okay. So the report's there to receive and note, councillors. All in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, we get on to page 119. It's item RES 7/21. Council resolution register October 21. Can I move in a second to deal with this item, please? Councillor Berry, thank you. Second, please. Councillor Forbes, and I thank you. And I'll hand over to our CEO to present the operational other council resolution register.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, again, it's pretty self-explanatory that the council notes the status of the council resolution register to October 2021. It's basically just to provide a standing monthly report to the ordinary meeting of council that outlines all resolutions of council's previously adopted and yet to be finalised. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions to the CEO to do with the resolution register? Councillor Bob.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's page 16 of the register.
16, Councillor?
Yeah. Page 16 of the resolution register. Yep. It's to do with the master plan proposal for the dam wall precinct. Look, I note that since the resolution was passed, it's been roughly 12 months. I know our CEO is keen on having master plans ready to go. And so I'm just requesting an update. We haven't received a great deal of official feedback on this. I note in the comments column of that item that a focus group's been identified and all this sort of thing. Personally, I don't even know who's on that. I know there are probably certain stakeholders being heavily involved with the archery club, which borders on the dam. I would have thought that some organisations, community organisations like the archery club might have been approached to have an opinion as far as maybe having someone on the focus group. So I just want to know what's going on, basically. It's been a year since it was first brought up. Thank you.
Mr. CEO. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Mayor, I have to admit I'm not up to speed on this particular issue, but you're quite right. I mean, we do need to get to the point where we do our master planning, and I think the intention is that we will treat that as an individual precinct going forward. I would assume that when we get the new council in next year, that would be one of the agenda items to look at our master planning needs and then how we're going to deliver such. And part of that process would be to identify interest groups and people that would participate in the consultation process around the master planning of each precinct or the town or whatever council decides. Other than that, I haven't got anything further to add regarding that particular precinct. I'm not sure if our engineer has anything to add or
only that we've received grant funding for the fishing platform. Otherwise, it's probably taken a little bit of a back seat, probably while Mel Bloom has been out on maternity leave, because she was really leading that process. So it's a matter of resourcing.
Yep. And just to add to that, if I do, can Councillor Raven quickly, that and commend your drive and interest in this, but the bigger picture, you know, to do with any activity, recreational. I'm going to the resolution where it's the recreational activities. We all know that from the health department going back a long time ago, that whenever the old water filtration plant was there, nothing was happening. But we've done anything we couldn't, and we spoke about it today. The new filtration plant is in process of starting to do the groundwork, and then so to have this plan and of the recreation use of that dam and everything that's revolved around that, and have it ready to go. And once that new filtration plant's up and running, there should be no excuse for the health department not to approve recreational use of that dam, because that was the original response to this council.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I note the fishing platform thing, and that's probably another self-interest group, and they've been working on those sort of things for a while, probably separate to any master plan. So I would just hate to see it fall off the radar, that's all, and it's been a while.
Yep.
And I'm probably not going to be on council after December, so I would just hope that by then we'd be happy to put in a submission on behalf of and we would like to become a stakeholder, but down the line, I just hope that you would keep that in mind, Mr. CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's councillors. So that's any other questions to deal with the council resolution register to the CEO? No. All in favour to receive and note. Against? Carried. Councillors, that's the end of our open meeting. We move into confidential. Can I have a move and a second to deal with the confidential item, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Berry, thank you. Councillor. Someone good? Kristen? Otherwise, we speak with it.
Oh, don't worry about that. We're having issues. Just speak a bit louder.
Okay. So now we're the confidential councillors, and to do with the motion that was decided in confidential is Liv, can you just come down a little bit? Beautiful, thank you. Moved Councillor McNish, seconded Councillor Berry, that Councillor Furr report until new councillors formed after 4th December 2021 election, which will meet in February 2022, and a survey of the affected residents is undertaken. Thank you, councillors. Back in open business. And there is no notice of motions. We've done a resolution register, we've done confidential business. And with that, I will close the meeting. I thank you all very much for your spirited bidding and attendance. And the meeting is closed. Peace and harmony. Well.